So moving on, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my first speaker of the day. He is known as a kilted celebrant, Allan Kidd. I am privileged to have known Allan and his family since he was a wee boy, and it goes without saying he is Marches daft. Allan is happily married with a family and new addition of Lewis the puppy. He was involved with the ATC in Linlithgow, commanded Bathgate Squadron of Air Cadets, and organised sports in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Awarded Long and Meritorious Service Medal 2012, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal 2012, and Commandant's Meritorious Service Award 2014. He has also worked in social care and is currently employed by Heineken UK as Operations Manager in the Contact Centre. His dream job, of course, is to be Chief Taster. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Allan Kidd.
We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. Those, of course, were the reassuring words of Her Majesty the Queen in the height of the global pandemic. Little, of course, did she or any of us know quite how long it would take to be with each other again. But here we are. My Lady Provost, Vice Admiral of the Forth, past Provosts, Bailies, members of the Deacon's Court, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, freeloaders, hangers-on, and anyone else who might have just wandered in. And Mummy. Tom, I asked the Provost in an email recently what I should refer to you as. She gave me several answers, none of which I can repeat today. A very, very happy Marches to everyone gathered here, and of course to those upstairs. Hopefully you can still hear me. Next year, try and up your donation a bit, and you could come and sit here with us. It's indeed a privilege and a pleasure to rise this morning to give the reply to my Lady Provost's welcome here in her first year as Linlithgow's first citizen and Provost of our brilliant Court of Deacons. Of course, as the very first female Provost of our great town, a decision and choice that we are all delighted with, given Liz's hard work and dedication over the last 25 years to the Court and, of course, to the town. It was the late great past Provost Ken Lindsay who said of his inaugural year as Provost that he felt as though he was standing on the shoulders of giants, given the great and the good that had gone before him in obtaining such high rank and office. I too feel some level of that same trepidation this morning, given the great and the good that have gone before me in giving this key address of the day. Greats, of course, such as the Reverend Ruth Innes from St Peter's Church on the High Street, the Reverend Dr Stuart Gillen from St Michael's Parish Church just behind us, and under the invitation of past Provost Jimison, the Reverend Richard Holloway, leader of the Scottish Episcopalians and Bishop of Edinburgh. No doubt you may notice a pattern emerging here, ladies and gentlemen. I myself, not so much a man of the cloth, but more it could be said as a man of the bar cloth, and that is indeed where the similarities potentially end. Given my liking to a small drama or six on various locations on Marches Day, it's probably a great idea that the Provost invited me to speak at breakfast and not this afternoon in Blackness, as who knows what could have come out of my mouth by then. Incidentally, I recently read that for every pint of lager that you drink, you could lose 9 minutes off your life. So by my calculation, I died sometime around 1872. Folks, isn't it great to be back together and celebrating again after missing our great day for the last 2 years? There are many things returning to normal, but today seems and feels like the best one yet. Of course, we know that for at least 480 years there has been a Marches Day recorded in the history books, possibly it being written before that first recorded one in 1542. And crucially, there has only been a handful of times that it has been cancelled, due mainly to war, and then, of course, the recent pandemic. How fitting and ironic was it that in 2019, the Royal Regiment of Scotland would parade through the town on Marches Day, some 100 years on from the regiment parading the town after the Great War was over, following a period again of the marches not taking place. So I've had a couple of extra years to prepare this speech, as I should have given it last year and indeed the year before that. So it should be bloody brilliant, given the time I've had to prepare it. Well, that's what you would hope for. But it didn't stop me sitting last night at midnight making tweaks and changes. And this morning, Deacon Stephanie Thompson told me on the high street, "I'm going to video if that's okay." I said, "That's fine, Stephanie. What are you going to do with it?" She said, "I'm going to put it on YouTube." She said, "Well, if you're any good or not." I said, "Well, if it appears on YouTube, I know it's been good. If it doesn't, I know it's been crap." So it was this morning again, 3 hours ago, that I understood again that adrenaline is indeed brown in colour. After the initial elation of being afforded this great honour wore off, I immediately turned my attention to what on earth was I going to say to entertain the distinguished group who assemble with the civic party first thing in the morning, when the alcohol intake has not kicked in yet, and they will be able to remember what I said, and as I said, if I was any good or not. So as all great 21st century speechmakers do, I immediately turned to Google to find a speech that I could simply cut and paste across, perform a few tweaks here and there, and it would be the finished article that I could simply rip off and call it my own. So having typed in www.gidmarchesspeeches.com, I realised that there are no published Marches speeches online, so I had to think of another method. I then enrolled in one of Linlithgow's favourite sons' school of speechmaking, under the auspices of one Robert H. Benny and Sons of Preston Road. Totally drew a blank there too, as the only advice Bobby could give was to just do as he did. He said, "Just get drunk and make a complete fool of yourself." It worked for me for years. Well, again, too early in the morning for that. So, the current Mrs. Kidd and self-appointed editor-in-chief of speeches intervened and cautioned me on the basic do's and don'ts of speechmaking. Incidentally, I don't know why I bothered with Google anyway. I am married, and it seems my wife knows bloody everything, so there was no need for the use of any search engine. Anyway, could I ask everyone to please join me and be upstanding? "Do take control of your audience," she said. "Good so far, you may all sit down." Don't drink too much. John Binney, is that good enough brand promotion for us? "Do make a light joke or two, nothing rude, sexual or with swearing in it." And she went on to say, "Don't try to be too charming, too witty or too intellectual, just be yourself." What faith she has in me. So to hell with her, I went rogue on this one and paid no attention to her advice. Nothing new there, I suppose. So here I am, and where do I begin? Well, my love affair with the Marches started in 1976, when I was roughly 1 month old. I don't have any recollection of it, as I was probably in a milk-induced stupor, and not much has changed over the years. Liquid-induced states have been the order of the day for most of the past 46 years, although there have been notable highs and indeed some lows that make the Marches unique and memorable in many different ways for each of us. I think what we feel about the Marches is very personal, and we all have our own take on it, particularly our best bits of the day. It is no understatement for me to say that I think the Marches is the greatest day of the year. Before becoming a father, I used to say it was better than Christmas, and in some ways I still feel that's true. I just don't tell the kids that. I recall my primary and secondary school days, where we would get 3 days off the school. The excitement would build on the Monday, and we would be making sure our Marches outfits were all laid out and ready to go for the big day. The news would get round that the shows had arrived, and then we would all troop off to the eve of the Marches disco in the marquee at Lowport that the Gala Day Committee organised, where fizzy juice and sugary sweets would wind us up even further. I remember not being able to sleep the night before, and that hasn't changed these days either. I still have that nervous excitement the night before, even as an adult. And then, of course, the Wednesday was the day the teachers and the other adults would spend recovering from the day before, and we would spend the day playing with our pals and talking about the shows, perhaps the goldfish we'd won, and the best floats in the procession. Incidentally, talking of my school days, I do have a bone to pick with past Provost Jimison. And indeed, a confession to make to my mum and dad. Bruce, when you taught me in the third year history class, you seemed to think it was appropriate to write in the report card, and I quote, "When Allan manages to stay awake, he does some quite good work." Now, this was to be ripped out of that report booklet and tossed in the bin, as I could not have given this to either Forbes or Evelyn. So, Bruce, I never quite knew if that was down to your lack of enthusiasm for teaching me or my lack of interest in listening to you. But as they say, that's all history now. Sorry, Mum. Anyway, I remember the Marches Day starting for us children, when the pipe band would pass the house at about 8 a.m. Excitement would increase and we would don our best outfits, all bought for the great day itself. We would make our way down the high street, buy our flags, meet up with family friends, and even get our photos taken with a monkey perched on our shoulders. I cannot ever remember a Marches Day that the sun didn't shine or the crowds didn't attend in their droves to cheer on the procession. I loved the way the excitement would mount as we saw the police horses starting to make their way down the high street with the reed band behind them as the town hall bell struck 11. It was stirring stuff indeed. That has never changed for me, apart from sometimes the police horses are swapped now for police bicycles. Not quite the same, but as I said, times change. In conjunction with this, Forbes, my dad, was in the process of joining the local fire brigade as a retained firefighter. This paved the way for a life of community involvement, and in particular with the Marches, and of course the Gala Day too. Along with the other firefighters such as Ian Gibson, Trevor Tuplin, Pat Davidson, George Gray and Tam Baird, and many others over the years, the station produced some amazing floats that continued to win many, many trophies, including not only at the Marches, but the Gala Day and the Bowness Fair. Well, we had to show them what a great float really looks like, didn't we? And other Gala Days around the county, and indeed the Edinburgh Cavalcade. I remember my dad being the fire brigade deacon the year they built the massive yellow fireman's helmet as their float. I can remember walking the high street at his side as he wore the deacon's sash proudly during those processions. Alongside all of that, of course, my mum would spend 26 years with the Gala Day and spend the final 10 years of her time as chairperson. Those were busy, hard-working, but very memorable and enjoyable years that the whole family got involved in. Now, as a young teenager, I was introduced to the 5 o'clock procession on Marches morning by none other than Isabel Brown, Belle, or Granny Brown, as she was known to us as. Being born and bred in the town, and an extremely proud black bitch, she took it upon herself to teach others the ways of the Marches. So that first morning at the Westport, when she shoved me and my sister Lorraine to the front, alongside her and her family, we went with the flow, as she loudly announced, "The Cunninghams are always at the front." Isabel's commitment to her town, and indeed this great day, has been borne out by the commitment shown by her son Martin as her Baron Bailey, her daughter Margaret as a member of the court, along with granddaughters Stephanie and Ashley, who are also court members too. What better way of leaving a legacy than your family becoming so deeply involved in keeping our great tradition alive that she so loved. Anyway, back to the teenage years when your parents don't know if they should let you go to the Marches with your mates or if they should keep you with them. Probably a parent's worst nightmare, to be honest, wondering if you're down the peel and fell in the loch drunk, being disorderly at the shows, or will you come and check in with them at the agreed time and place to make sure that you're okay. To be fair, probably very valid fears, and whilst I never had any real issues at the Marches, I'm sure my parents were nervous about letting me loose. Can always remember one other year we were away on holiday. My dad was working shifts at the time and it was his only time off over the summer. And there we were on Marches Day, lying miserably on our sun loungers in Mallorca, every 15 minutes saying, "Wonder what they're doing now. Oh, they'll be leaving for the brig now. They'll be off to Blackness now." And then Forbes sitting up, saying with a cheeky smile on his face, "At least they're getting a bloody good day for it." That was the first and last time I ever missed the Marches. So into my 20s and into adult life, I can remember the very first Marches invitation dropping through the letterbox. Past Provost Ed Morton was at the helm, and it was 1998, which was his middle year. To understand and be exposed to what really goes on behind the scenes, as it were, is and always has been amazing. I was even more hooked than before, and continued to love being in the town at 5 a.m. with the flutes and drums, then hurrying home to get ready for Provost breakfast, the fraternising, taking part in the parade and then off to Blackness after the brig, and the grand finale at 5 p.m. is another great highlight, when the town come out in their droves to welcome us back from Blackness. I love it. But more than that, I love the sense of community, the sense of belonging with every age group, the sense of togetherness, and the sense of including everyone. I have enjoyed riding the marches ever since. People come and go, as do provosts, but the tradition stays the same, and the essence of checking our boundaries carry on in the same way as it has for centuries before. I just missed riding the marches under the direction of past Provost Hector Woodhouse, who of course is our eldest surviving Provost of the court. I met Hector the other day on the High Street, and as we chatted, he was telling me he had gone into the pharmacist to buy some prescription Viagra and asked if they could cut the tablets into quarters. I can cut them for you, sir, said the pharmacist, that's no problem, but a quarter of a tablet will not have the normal desired effect. Listen, son, I'm in my 80s, Hector said. I don't want to perform. I just want it to stick out far enough that I don't pee in my slippers anymore. Sorry, Hector. So back to my 20s, where I was forced to leave home and buy my own flat. As many of us did back then, and maybe still do today, I bought a flat in Lower Linlithgow, also known as Upper Kinneil or simply Bo'ness. It was where all Linlithgow's first-time buyers went, as it was far more affordable than prestigious Linlithgow. Truth is, Evelyn put my dig money up by a £5 a week, and I decided it was time to go rather than stay and be ripped off. I felt like I was there on missionary work, and I saw it as an opportunity of spreading the gospel of what a real town and royal borough does to celebrate its community. I was going to say no offence, Frank, but I'll retract that. Anyway, we do look forward to Frank McGarry, voice of the Bo'ness Fair, toasting our great borough later today in Blackness, and all the nice things he's going to say about us. Frank, we do love a bit of banter, and no doubt you will have some cheeky quips and stories and jokes to tell us, to entertain us after our lunch. Talking of the Bo'ness Fair, that's the day that even the seagulls celebrate down there. It's the only day they get the cowp to themselves. During breakfast, Frank was telling me that Mrs. McGarry just informed him at the weekend that sex is dramatically better on holiday. That's not the best postcard he's ever received. He also told me that being from Bo'ness, he had quite a poor upbringing, confessing that if he didn't wake up on Christmas morning with an erection, he had nothing to play with all day. We went on to reminisce about the good old days, and Frank was saying that years ago he dated a girl with a twin from Bo'ness. People used to ask him how he could tell them apart. He said, that's really easy. Jill painted her nails and Bobby had a penis. So, the election of our first female provost to the court, and of course in the town's history, and why not? We've had 2 female prime ministers, we have a female head of state, a female first minister, so it necessarily follows that we should have a female provost. It also seems West Lothian Council has seen fit to follow in our town's example, and a female provost has just been elected to the council. We rejoice in the appointment of Liz as our provost. Liz, you will be remembered, I am sure, for many things in your tenure as our first citizen, but you will also pass into the history books for being the first female to hold such office in our town. Liz is, of course, a very proud black bitch, daughter of a black bitch, and is also married to Tom, an equally proud black bitch. That's a whole lot of bitching going on in one family. But I could think of no one better to be our provost. As I kissed my wife goodbye this morning, she reminded me not to come home in the state I did after the Deacon's Night on Saturday. On arrival home in the wee small hours, I discovered that tea is a far more dangerous substance than lager. I had about 14 pints, I reckon, while Mrs. Kidd was drinking tea at home. You should have seen how angry and violent she was when I got in. I was very peaceful and quiet and headed off to bed as she shouted at me all night long and into the next morning. So please, ladies, take note. If you cannot handle your tea, then please just don't drink it. Talking of my wife, we were lying in bed last night and I looked deep into her eyes and said, "Darling, looking at you reminds me of the lottery." She replied, "You mean I'm worth bloody millions?" I said, "No, I wish you'd bloody roll over." If the ordinary passage of time had continued and we hadn't been in a pandemic, we would have had many opportunities to thank and applaud our immediate past Provost, John Cunningham, in his last year as Provost of the town, but unfortunately that wasn't to be. It would be remiss of us not to pay tribute to his excellent service to the court and the town, and I'm sure his family, if they're present today, will pass on these remarks to him. John passes into the history books, of course, as the only Provost to serve the Court of Deacons for a period of 4 years. Before he became a past Provost, one of the elite force of town worthies who continue to support the court in everything it does. I also hear that he has been admitted into the past Provost's encrypted and private WhatsApp group, and he will need to learn the many acronyms that they use. I have a few examples here to share. LMDO, laughing my dentures out. BFF, not best friends forever, but best friend fell. IMHAO, is my hearing aid on? NDIL, TIMD, never did it like that in my day. And of course, the most important one of all, which you will know, folks, TFT, ATSTIJ, the first Tuesday after the second Thursday in June. In today's modern world, folks, there are many things that impact our lives and lots of stresses and strains. It's great just to be able to put all that behind us today and concentrate on celebrating a common love of our town and its history. With the cost of living crisis hitting hard, I told my boss the other day that I had 3 companies after me, and so I was looking for a wage rise to stay. She said, "What companies is it?" I said, "It's electric, gas and water." There is one consolation though, folks. In 20 years' time, we'll be calling these the good old days. So as we weave our way through today and hear the many speeches that will be made, I would want you to ponder this question. What is the difference between a Joe Biden speech and a Donald Trump speech? When Biden is speaking, you wonder if he's had a stroke. And when Trump is speaking, you wonder if you've had the stroke. And I hope none of us feel like that at the end of today. Now, I think you've probably heard just about enough of me, ladies and gentlemen, and it is time for us to go and enjoy this great day in the town's calendar and head to the palace to fraternise with the Dyers and other fraternities. It's our job to cheer and greet the townspeople as we travel to our boundaries, both west and east today. After all, they've come here today to see us. Enjoy it all, as I know I will, and let's have a fantastic day to remember. And of course, if you see me near a bar later, don't be afraid to buy me a drink. You have been a fantastic audience this morning and very kind to me, listening to all my ramblings. My Lady Provost, can I thank you most sincerely for the great honour that you and the court have bestowed on me this morning. This is a moment that I will never forget and I will carry with me for the rest of my life. So the final words I want to say, and when I do, it is with the greatest pride and sense of love for this town and its people. Long live Linlithgow, long live the Provost, and long live the Marches.